Welcome to edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. It is Wednesday, January the 4th. Ian Cameron, Conor Mack, ready to break down the Wednesday college basketball slate. It is a massive one, so we'll get right down to it and begin with Auburn and Georgia, our first marquee game. We got a bunch of them today on the card. It is Auburn and Georgia in the SEC to get things started. Right now, we've got Auburn in this one currently a 7-point road favorite, 136.5 the total in this game. The Georgia Bulldogs have actually been pretty solid offensively, believe it or not, the last few games. They've won 6 of their last 7. I guess the Notre Dame win was impressive, but other than that, they haven't played anybody, so keep that in mind. But they have been scoring basketball a lot better, into the 70s in 4 straight games. Can they maintain that here against Auburn is the question. I think the total is the way I would bet this game. I would only look at Auburn because I think this is a huge step up in class for Georgia. I've not been impressed with their non-conference schedule. I think Auburn is significantly better than them. Auburn sometimes can be, laying points on the road a little tricky to trust, but they did beat up Washington, I remember, recently on the road, showing you that they can do it. And I think they could do that here tonight. So I have a small bet on Auburn laying the points, but I like the over here. I think it gets over. It's 136. Georgia's not typically going to push pace, but their offense has been in better form lately. I think Auburn's going to get their points here against this Georgia team, which at times defensively, really against the better competition, they've struggled. Look at their results: 87 allowed to UAB, 79 allowed to Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech's not even a great offensive team. So I think it gets over this modest number in the 130s. Conor, what do you think?
It might. Auburn for sure is an over basketball team. The last couple of years, Georgia is not. They've scored a little bit, but the competition, like you mentioned, they haven't been beating on some shitty teams in this one. Georgia's covered and played Auburn tough. The home team's been solid in this matchup the last few. I lean Georgia. I just think it's just a few too many, but I haven't bet this one, so I'm off.
All right, we move along here to Villanova, Georgetown, an old school Big East showdown. Well, it's not a showdown. Georgetown's kind of shitty, but nevertheless, Villanova, 9.5 point. Yeah, old school. It would have been a great matchup. 9.5 point road favorites, 141.5. Yeah, the old John Thompson, the senior, is when it would have been a good matchup here with Villanova and Georgetown. For Georgetown, it's just 5-10. I mean, he's got to be on his last legs here, Patrick Ewing, at this point with what we've seen from this program. I mean, on your home court to lose 80-51 to Butler, that's a disgrace. I mean, Butler's a nice team, don't get me wrong, solid, but you shouldn't be losing to them by 29 points on your home floor. They can't even score now. I mean, in some games, I mean, that's the issue. We know they've never been able to play any defense, but even the scoring for Georgetown is not always there one game to the next. I don't want to step in front of Villanova here. Villanova circling the wagons, I think, tonight following 2 tough losses. They gave UConn a pretty tough game, but lost by 8 on the road in Stores. And then at home against a rolling Marquette team. And we saw what Marquette did last night against St. John's. They overcame a slow start and a halftime deficit and beat St. John's last night. Marquette is just playing great ball, and they got the best of Villanova over the weekend. I think Villanova could put the absolute smackdown tonight on this Georgetown team. And I'm going to do a rare road favorite first half full game split here on Villanova in this game. You can get them at around -4 in the first, -5.5 in the first half and -9.5 full game. I think it's just a rout. I mean, Georgetown's shown no ability here in the last few games to be competitive, especially when they play good teams. And I think you're going to see that here tonight. I think Villanova gets well tonight against Georgetown. And it is worth noting, last year, Georgetown has covered 4 straight, but again, they were getting more points than this. Keep that in mind. Villanova beat them by 11 and by 8 last year. And at Georgetown, they won by 11. And so I think they can get a double-digit win tonight. What do you think here, Con?
That's what I was going to mention. I remember UConn, not huge. They came in here and won by 11. They could be asleep. I don't want either team right now. I don't want to lay points with Villanova. I know they've been playing a little bit better basketball, but not on the road. They should beat up this Georgetown team. Just don't play any defense. And then you mentioned what they struggled to shoot. Like, they just got blown out against Butler. I watched some of that game, the first half. It was not good. You know what? We know Nova's so slow, but they're so efficient offensively. This could get over, but I'm off. both sides here. I don't want anything. You mentioned they've been better in the past, but this is the worst Georgetown team. I mean, the last couple of years have been bad, but right now I think it is.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see how if Villanova responds. They definitely should. VCU and Duquesne. Next up here, we've got Duquesne, a 1-point home favorite, 137 the total in this game. I think coming into the season, if you look at the pecking order in the A-10, I think many of us would have thought that VCU is the better basketball team. But I think Duquesne might be better than people thought. Now, again, if they face the most difficult schedule in non-conference play, not really. And when they were at Dayton, they lost by 12. But that was on the road. Here they're at home, where they're 10-2 on the year. VCU's gone on the road twice at Memphis and Temple and lost by double digits. So I've still got and to me, VCU is still, one of those teams where you don't know what you're going to get on either side of the basketball court. Like offense is hit or miss for them. Even their defense hasn't been necessarily up to par at times in recent games. We'll have to wait and see. But in this game here, I like Duquesne, believe it or not, here. Just in a pick 'em price range at home to get the job done. Duquesne did cover, by the way, the last two meetings last year. And yes, VCU won at home 71-62 against Duquesne last year. But VCU was a hell of a lot better than Duquesne last year. I think Duquesne has definitely closed the gap. And they might have closed the gap enough to where I'm willing to trust them at home to get the victory. VCU has not impressed me on the highway this year. And that could end up being the difference when it's all said and done. And I think this is a very well-coached, solid Duquesne team, very solid and sound defensively as well in their recent games. They shut down Rhode Island completely at home on this floor in their last game. I think Duquesne can absolutely win this basketball game. What do you think here, Connor?
I think they can too. VCU's just struggled. You mentioned they're just not that tight defensively as they were. This total, though, let's talk the total. I think it's just a bit too high. Duquesne's been good to the under. You flip side on them, they've been better defensively. So I lean under in this spot. And yeah, I'd be on the home team here. VCU's just struggled on the road. Even dating back to last year, they just haven't been very good. I don't want them here, even though they just probably got to go in and win. I think this Duquesne and under.
All right, next up here as we continue along, we've got Loyola Chicago and Davidson. Davidson, 4-point home favorites, 134.5 the total. I don't know about you, Connor, because I was on that same bet as you on Saturday. I've soured on Davidson a little bit. I did not expect that kind of performance.
That was pathetic.
That was awful. Brutal. No defense. No offense either. I mean, they could not make a shot against Dayton. 69-55 home loss in that game. They just haven't been very good lately. I mean, their only win was at Fordham's, 57-43. Big fucking whoop. That's not saying a whole lot. Loyola Chicago, this team's been just all over the place. I mean, I thought they were getting their shit right, getting their shit together. They beat up Wisconsin Green Bay. They have a nice win against Clemson where they beat them by 18. I thought, here comes the Loyola Chicago team. I thought was going to be pretty good. And then they get romped by Stanford, and they lose as favorites to George Washington, 97-87 in their last game. Valentine, the coach, kind of called them out and really called them out for their lack of effort defensively in the loss against George Washington. I think they step up here, Loyola Chicago. I think this is the night. Again, this is another team. Both of these teams have been erratic, but Loyola's faced a tough schedule. They got ripped by their coach for lack of defense against G-Dub. I think this is the spot for Loyola to step up. They're catching points. They might even be the better team personnel-wise. And I still trust their defense more than Davidson. Plus 4.5, I like Loyola in this spot. I think they show up after the tirade by their coach, and rightfully so. You give up 97 to George Washington. That's bad. Loyola's better than that. I think there's a better game in them. I think we see it tonight. What do you think here, C-Matt?
Yeah, that was absolutely pathetic by Davidson. I liked them. They lost. You mentioned they fought them, but they lost by 8 to Purdue. They had a close loss to Delaware. They lost to Charlotte by 2, beat San Francisco. They had some good wins and like close losses. So that's why those points were valuable on Saturday. And talk about a no-show. Classic Davidson. Goddamn bums. I don't want anything with this game here, but I would look. Loyola, you mentioned their defense hasn't been great, but I think they play better here. And the other side with Davidson, slow. Their defense can be all right at times, and they're not shooting it well. Maybe they come out tonight, but I don't want them. I don't want to back them. Not laying points. Are you kidding me? Hell no. So I'm off here completely. I'd lean Loyal if I had to, and I'd be on the under. That's both teams. Everything in this game trends the under. So.
Yeah, I don't blame you there with the total. I think it's probably low scoring as well in this one. All right, next up here we go to the ACC, Miami, Georgia Tech. Miami Hurricanes 6.5-point road favorites, 146.5 being the total in this game. Georgia Tech has shown that you can lay points with them on the road or trust them on the road. They're 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread in their true road games. UCF, Louisville, Notre Dame wins and covers in all 3 games. And we've started to see things come apart here for Georgia Tech. Really, in their 3 ACC games, they've been non-competitive, in all 3 games. Lose by 16 at North Kakalaki, lose by 13 at home to Clemson, lose by 18 at home to Virginia. I mean, just not very competitive. Miami's won and covered 3 straight, and each of their wins last year against Georgia Tech at home and here at Georgia Tech were by 9 points or more. I think they win by at least this margin here as well. I like 6.5 laying it here with the Miami Hurricanes in this one. What do you think here, Connor?
I think Miami wins. You're just not getting a great, number, and it's moving a little bit, too. I think, but it is right. This could be just a tough game. You mentioned they've been decent so far on the road. Miami is a great guard play. All those guys, Wong obviously, should get it done. I just don't want to lay this on the road, even though I think they win. So in the end, I'm going to pass here. Miami played totals under, more on the road. Tough. I don't want to touch the total. When they're at home, they're more of an over team, but on the road, they've been under. But Georgia Tech, on the flip side, played to some overs this year. So a little bit different. So in the end, off.
All right. Next up here as we continue along, we've got Duke and NC State right back to the ACC. It is Duke 5-point road favorites, 144.5 the total in this game. Money coming in on Duke. It ain't my money. This is another team. I mean, on the road, what have we seen out of them? We've seen one true road game, and they lost by 11 at Wake. And I like Wake, but that's a sign that this team wasn't ready for a road environment. And now you got to lay 5 with them here. And look, NC State is coming off a bad game against Clemson. They lost by 14. At home against Louisville, they didn't cover, but they won. At home against Furman, they won going away by 19 points. They did have a loss against Pittsburgh as 10-point home favorites, 68-60. So there is some anti-NC State sentiment in this line move. But look, all of a sudden that loss against Pitt doesn't look so bad now, does it? Pittsburgh is just rolling, and another great win for them last night against Virginia at home. So all of a sudden, you don't penalize NC State so much for losing to Pitt at home. Back then, it was like, what a bad loss that is. Well, no, we're finding out Pittsburgh's playing some pretty good basketball, and they have played very good basketball for the last few weeks. So I don't know if I like Duke. I know I don't like Duke laying 5 here. I'd lean to the home dog here, NC State, and I like the over in this game. I think it gets there. NC State's going to push pace. Duke on the road when we saw them. They didn't show any defense whatsoever, gave up 81 points. Duke's actually been trending over 5-1 to the over in their last 6 games. Give me the over as well and the home dog, the Wolfpack. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, the total. You mentioned it. Duke playing more Duke here a little bit basketball. They're great to the under a little bit early. NC State, one of my best over teams the last 2 or 3 years. I think they're money. And when you go through the numbers, great offensively, 43, about 80 points a game, but defensively, everything's in the 170 and below, just kind of if you go through on all. So I think there's points here. I'd lean NC State, always at home. They're tough. You're catching almost 5. So I lean that way, but I think it gets over as well.
All right, Penn State and Michigan, Big Ten action here. Michigan 4-point home favorites, 141.5 the total in this game. For Michigan, this is their I don't know if they're coming off a perfect game. That's really what it is. I mean, they couldn't have played any better against Maryland. I mean, Maryland's not chopped liver, and they won 81-46. Like, I couldn't believe the score. I think it was 20-2 for Michigan at one point.
Maryland's had some no-shows, though. Couple this year. Really.
All of a sudden, Maryland's kind of falling apart here. So I don't know how much stock you put into that. What I do know is Penn State's rolling. They've won 5 in a row, including a big road win at Illinois. They're betting Michigan here because I think people fall in love with that Maryland game. I'm leaning with the Penn State side a little bit here as road dogs in this one. Keep in mind, last year at home, Michigan only beat Penn State by 1, 58-57 at Penn State. Close game. A few years ago, Michigan at home against Penn State only won by 4. Penn State's covered 4 in a row head-to-head against Michigan. I like the points here. I like the +4. They're betting Michigan, not me. What do you think here, Coach?
I looked at this a lot, back and forth. if you initially, people like, oh yeah, just take Michigan here, but you got to look at this Penn State team. Been very good, and you mentioned going last year, and covering the last 4 times. Just they live and die by the J a lot. Penn State when they're hitting them, they're in control. They have great guard play. Obviously, Michigan's got to pound the ball inside with Hunter Dickinson. I think the points are a little valuable as well. I'm going to stay off this game though. You mentioned when these teams get together too, it trends under, so I'd only look under here.
All right, next up, we've got Texas A&M and Florida. To the SEC we go. Florida, 6-point home favorites, 5.5 now in some spots. They're betting A&M here. A total down from 142.5 to 138 across the board. This one's a tricky one because I think Florida wins the game, and I lean Florida. Are we ready to lay 6 is the question you have to ask yourself. And is this team ready to play, I think, more solid at the defensive end more than anything? I think this team's very capable offensively, more than they were in the past under a Golden. Last 2 games, not so much against Oklahoma and Auburn, but at home, they've really scored a lot of points. You would think they've got a better shot to do that here against A&M. A&M on the defensive end of the court. It looks good when they play the likes of Wofford, Northwestern State, and Prairie View. But then you start to look at some of the games where they played somebody decent. Colorado put up 103 on this defense. Boise State puts up 86 on this Texas A&M defense. Memphis puts up 83 on this Texas A&M defense. And all 3 of those games fly over the total. So this is kind of me not agreeing with either move in this game, quite honestly. I'm more interested in Florida now than I was at the opener. And I know A&M last year had the better of Florida in both games. Keep in mind that was the Mike White Florida Gators. This is a different coaching staff, different style, a more experienced team, in my opinion. I'm definitely more and more interested in Florida the more this line drops. And honestly, I'm thinking over the total in this game. I think it can get there. And 4 of the last 5 meetings between the Aggies and the Gators have gone over the total. And that's back when Florida, A, was stagnant offensively under the last coach, and B, they weren't playing with the pace they are under Todd Golden. So they're betting it under, not me. What do you think here, Con?
I don't want anything with this one. I don't want to lay points with Florida, even at home. You mentioned it, though. They've had some bad shooting games, against good teams, Oklahoma or UConn. They should be able to score tonight, but I don't want the over. I don't want the under. I don't want either squad. So pass.
All right, next up here we go to, I think we're going to the Big 12 this time. Iowa State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, 3.5-point home favorites, 125 is the total in this game. Iowa State, obviously I cashed a ticket with them against Baylor. The one concern I have is letdown, right? After a huge win for them over the weekend against the Baylor Bears. We only have seen Iowa State once in a true road game, and they got absolutely destroyed by Iowa, 75-56. So all of that is a concern. There's no question. But I still think they're the better team than Oklahoma, quite honestly. I feel that way. I feel getting 3.5 points is I definitely lean that way a little bit here in this game. I just don't. After the Baylor game, I'm a little worried about the spot. But, I like what I'm seeing from the Cyclones on the defensive end of the floor. They're very good. They could really frustrate Oklahoma, I think, a little bit in that side of it. They're better defensively overall than Oklahoma as well. And I think when you look at the offensive end of things, too, Iowa State a little bit, in terms of their shooting, it's getting a little bit better as well. And I think that has the potential to carry over here in this one. Oklahoma is, by the way, deficient in the rebounding battle and margin here as well, at least in comparison to Iowa State. So I have some mild concern about whether Iowa State can bring that same focus here coming off the big Baylor win, but I definitely lean a little to the Cyclones. The only thing that I fear is the spot here for the Iowa State side. What do you think here, Con?
Both these teams struggle on the offensive glass. They're both not very good. But overall, defensively, both teams are good. Even with this total, I think it's just a rock fight. I'd lean under. I barely got that Wisconsin under by a point last night. I think this game could be similar. Home team's been good in this one. I think if you like going with the just money line, because it could be tight. You're right. So in the end, even though I think Oklahoma wins it, I'll be off.
All right, next up here, we continue along. It is Drake and Southern Illinois. Now, I know this is a mid-major. This is the Missouri Valley, but this is a damn good mid-major game tonight. One of the better mid-major games on the card tonight. We've got Drake, Southern Illinois, the Salukis, 1-point home favorites, 127. the total in this game. I'll tell you what, Drake for a long time has been one of the top teams in this conference. I think Southern Illinois, I think this is Southern Illinois is going to win this game. I like what I'm seeing out of this Saluki squad. 6 straight wins. They beat a solid Murray State team on the road. They crushed Belmont. And I know Belmont's not as good this year. They've proven that. There's definitely not as good of a Belmont team as we've seen in the past. But still, to beat them 63-45, hold that team offensively to 17 of 52 from the floor, you're doing something right if you're Southern Illinois. Drake on the road's been concerning. I mean, they lost to Missouri State their last road game New Year's Day. St. Louis beats them. Richmond crushes them. Indiana State beats them, and they were favored. They've had some tough times, on the road. And this is still a very good team. Tucker DeVries, you always have to fear him. He's a lethal scorer for the Bulldogs. But I think this is Southern Illinois here. At home, they've played well. They only have to win the game. Basically a pick 'em. Give me SIU here. What do you think, Con?
I think this total's too high. Under in this one. You mentioned Drake, just the struggles on the road, and they struggled to score on the road. They had that all right win against Mississippi State on the neutral floor, but I don't want them here. As soon as they get back home, I think you take them. But Southern, trusting this team for me has been difficult because the offensive struggles of Southern Illinois. They could just go dormant at times, and man, they're ugly to watch them. But I think they can eke out a win. They just got to win it here at home. But I like the under better.
All right, liking the under here in this one. Next up, we've got Missouri and Arkansas. Arkansas 7.5-point home favorites, 154. I like the over here. I think you're going to see a lot of. This is actually one of my favorite totals on the card. I get it; it's in the 150s. It's pretty high already. But Missouri has proven they're becoming a very lethal offensive team. I think that's proven with what they did against Illinois, with what they did against Kentucky. One thing to do it against Illinois, Kentucky, though, to put 89 on them, it's been extremely impressive. And it's going to be a great matchup of this high-flying, high-scoring Missouri team that can score inside, score outside, against an Arkansas team that is actually very good defensively. And that's going to be a great matchup here, that great offense of Mizzou, that great defensive tenacity of Arkansas. That being said, Arkansas is pretty damn good offensively themselves, or at least they have the potential to be. And there's still some questions about just how good Mizzou can be defensively going forward. So I think when you look at it, I know this has been a recent under series history with the Razorbacks and the Tigers. 3 straight meetings back to 2021 have gone under, and the totals were lower than they are here. That doesn't stop me from liking the over. I think you're going to see a lot of points. I'm liking what I'm seeing at home, especially from Arkansas on the offensive end of the basketball court. 85 against Asheville, 70, 99 against San Jose State. They've always been under Musselman. At times on the road, their offense can struggle, but at home, it's been pretty damn solid. If you look at the home numbers specifically, they're shooting almost 50% from the floor, and their point per game average goes from 76 up to 77.7. So it does, it does get better, their offensive numbers. So I like the over. I have not made up my mind what to do about the side. I don't think I want to step in front of Mizzou right now in that offense, especially because, look, they can get through the back door. Like a football team that's high scoring, very good offensively. They can get through the back door late, even when they're trailing, because they can flat out score. That's what Missouri can do. Like, I think this is going to be tough because now they got to do it on the road. They're not on a neutral court anymore. They're not on their home floor anymore. They've got to go on the road and win. They only have one true road game this year, and it was a win in overtime at Wichita State, but you can't compare Wichita State to Arkansas. This is going to be a lot more difficult, but I don't think I want to step in front of Mizzou. They've got a nice vibe to them right now, and that offense is dangerous when they're getting this kind of points. So I'd lean to Missouri a little bit, plus 7.5. I like the over, though, a lot more, the total than the side. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Arkansas needs to beat up this Missouri team on the glass. That's one they struggle with, almost 300th in the country. The offense, 88 points a game, third. They might be able to score. I think it might get over, even this total. I agree with you. I still think it could slip over, so I lean that way. I mean, Missouri's just been crazy run, but this is a true road game, and Arkansas has got to be pissed off that loss, the LSU, that tight one, 60-57, kind of lower scoring. I'd look at Arkansas early. I wouldn't go full game with them. I'd go first half because it's stretching it out there, 7.5 full game. But I think Mitchell, Council, all those guys will get it done. So first half, leans for me with Arkansas.
All right, next up here we've got first half especially because you're right off that. I can't even explain how disappointing it was to see them lose at LSU. I still think this team's a lot better than LSU, but they didn't have a good game on the road in Baton Rouge. We'll see if they bounce back from that here in this one. All right, UConn and Providence. Where is our guy in the chat here? Is he here? Nasty Nate, I heard rumblings that he's going to be there. Yeah, there we go. That he's going to be there at the game at the Dunkin' Donuts Center there in Providence, Rhode Island here. This is a huge matchup, obviously, in the Big East. UConn, 5.5-point road favorites, 142 the total in this one. I'm on those Friars tonight, my friend, and it's not because you're there and I'm trying to give you support. It's because I legitimately think now UConn has finally hit their first stumbling block, first loss, wake-up call. Maybe it's a wake-up call and they play great tonight, but I think it's somewhat. And I know UConn's been a terror up until the last game when they finally got knocked off by Xavier. But, and I know, like I said, UConn's been a terror. I get it. I totally understand it. But this is disrespectful. This motherfucking respectful, as Dutch Boy Fresh would say, to put Providence 5.5-point home dogs. They're 8-0 at home. It's a well-coached basketball team. They've done nothing wrong. They've won 7 in a row. They're 4-0 in their last 4 Big East games. They went to Seton Hall, won and covered. They won in overtime at home against a very good Marquette team, 103-98. Marquette's rolling right now, by the way. Providence beat them here at home. They crushed Butler by 20 on the road. They destroyed DePaul by 15 on the road. I mean, they have done everything right here for Providence. They're playing great at both ends. Defensively, they're scoring a lot of points as well. Devin Carter was terrific in the last game for them. Jared Bynum's been good. Bryce Hopkins, who's been terrific, averaging almost a double-double this season for Ed Cooley's team. This is a really good basketball team. And UConn now, as the Big East season has gotten here, we were wondering, when is this team going to when's the point spread going to catch up to them? Well, it has. They've now gone 3 games without covering. Georgetown, they won big, but not by 22, which is what they were favored by. Villanova, 8-point win as 12.5-point favorites. And then, of course, at Xavier, they were 3-point favorites on the road. They lost 83-73. I get it. It's a bounce-back spot. But it's also the first straight-up loss of the year for UConn, and it's the bubble burst theory where I say when you lose that first game of the season, it's not always easy to bounce back. When you go this long into the season, 14-0, and you finally lose that first game, I don't think it's an automatic assumption that you just bounce back and you win again. Sometimes that's like, wow, that really takes a lot out of you losing that first game when you've gone this long undefeated. And now you got to walk into the Dunkin' Donuts Center, Providence. It's going to be rocking there tonight, I would think, with UConn coming in. I think Providence is a live home dog here in this one. And the numbers finally caught up to the Huskies. Still a great team, Sonogo. The guard is outstanding for them. No question about that. But at the end of the day, they're now an overvalued commodity, and it has proven that way the last 3 games for the Huskies. So I like Providence here. What do you think, Connor?
Second straight, road game for UConn. Still, I think the top team in the country. You're going to lose, in conference on the road a few games. This just isn't. Could they go out here maybe early after the bad loss? That's where I'd look. If you like UConn, maybe a little bit early. But I'm right with you. I think this is Providence. Their defense is not great, but it hasn't been bad. These two teams, someone mentioned to the under. I'd lean that way. This total's a little bit high, but I'm going to stay off. I'm just with you here. How hot, dude. Cooley, dog is, coach, all that stuff. UConn could still go in there and win, but I think Providence covers the number. And this is one you got to take money line. It's kind of like last night I mentioned with Pitt. You got to have some on the money line here.
There he is. Way to go, Nasty Nate, taking shots with the boys, waiting for the Uber, I guess, to drive him down to Providence for the Dunkin' Donuts Center. So that's going to be a good atmosphere. I'd be shocked if they're not.
No more Dunkin' Donuts, too. It's something else. I don't even know the name of it.
It's the same arena. They just changed the name, right?
Yeah, they just changed the name. Yeah. I'm just saying they changed it.
It was such a great name, too. And they always fuck this shit up with the name change. There we go. The AMP now, yeah. But nevertheless, it's a good building when Providence basketball is good. So we'll see what kind of environment we get there tonight. All right, Clemson, Virginia Tech. We've got Virginia Tech 6.5-point home favorites, 136 the total in this game. Clemson's becoming an easy team to figure out. Take them at home. Don't take them on the road, or at least don't trust them on the road. That's been the way they've been at times. Now, they did beat Georgia Tech last road game. I was on them against NC State. They won there. But now going on the road against Virginia Tech, who are coming off back-to-back losses, now back home after those 2 losses. Feels like a circle the wagons type of deal involving Virginia Tech in this game. Now, last year they were tight games. A 1-point win for Virginia Tech, 4-point win for Clemson. I just don't know if I'd want to go against Virginia Tech here tonight. You're right about the absence there. You're right to a Couture here. Potential absence for Hunter Couture for Virginia Tech. Questionable with the forearm injury. And he missed the last game, too, that they lost against Wake Forest. So keep an eye on that. We'll see if he returns tonight for the Hokies. It's a big boost to Mike Young's team. It's a guy that so far this season, he's averaging 9.6 points per game, shooting a pretty decent percentage, 40% from three-point range. Very good long-distance shooter. It looks like he's out. So, but it is a Virginia Tech team, again, back home off 2 losses in a row. Long-term, that's a good angle in college basketball. You get a team back home cooking after 2 road losses. Usually you get them stepping up, playing their best. That being said, you do have to lay 6 and 6.5. And Couture out, and Clemson did play this team tough last year. So I was initially looking at Virginia Tech. I'm probably going to leave it alone now. What do you think, C-Matt?
I just don't want Clemson on the road, even with him out. Obviously, he's their 4th or 5th option, solid player, almost 30 minutes a game. But I think it's Virginia Tech. It is 6. Maybe you split this one or look first half a little bit. That's what I was thinking. So I think Virginia Tech bounces back here. Clemson on the road, do not want them.
I don't blame you. All right, next up, we've got Wake Forest, North Carolina. North Carolina, 10.5 point home favorites here, 152.5 the total, which has been bet up here in this game. I certainly wouldn't argue with the total move in this one. What did we see last year? 98-76 with these 2 teams. It flew over 150.5 points. The 2 previous meetings before that also went over the total. I definitely think we'll see plenty of points in this one. Wake Forest, generally a better offensive team than a defensive team. And Wake Forest, they are coming off 2 very good home wins, 81-70 against Duke, 77-75 against Virginia Tech. Question is, can they go on the road and do it? They had that great road win at Wisconsin, but they've had 2 ugly road performances since then against Clemson and Rutgers. So which Wake road team is going to show up tonight? The one that beat Wisconsin or the one that got absolutely rinsed by Clemson and Rutgers on the road? That's the question you got to ask yourself here. And last year when these teams met, it was all Wake, but that was at Wake 98-76, and it was North Carolina in disarray at the time. Remember, that was North Carolina with their season kind of crumbling before they got red hot down the stretch, made the tournament, and went all the way to the Final Four. And so that's the question you ask yourself. North Carolina's off a lost to Pitt on the road last week. You know, it probably is a bounce-back spot for North Carolina, and the last ACC home game they had, the only one, was Georgia Tech. They were double-digit favorites. They won by 16. I still have a hard time laying this much with North Carolina. I think Wake, I'd give them a look, just because of the coach. I think he could out-coach Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis has got, I think he's gotten to this point largely because of who he's got on his team. I think sometimes some of his coaching and X's and O's, and there was one team he played earlier this year. They play zone, and he didn't realize they played zone. I mean, it was the most shocking thing. It's like, come on, coach, you got to know that, if you're Hubert Davis here in this one. But I've got to lean to Wake here when they're getting this number of points. But I like the total even more than the side over 152.5. Conor, Wake, UNC.
I think it is Wake, too. I mean, do you want to keep backing this team? Is kind of like Kentucky last night. So they're just not covering numbers, and then they're laying 10. Should they win here at home? Sure. And Wake struggles, you mentioned, on the road. They did have that good one. Was that a neutral game against Wisconsin, or was that a true road game? I think it was a true road game.
That was a true road game. That was at Kohl Center. Yep.
That was solid. I think this game gets over. It's just high total here. I'm not going to mess with it. I lean that way. You mentioned in the game Missouri. I think this is the ultimate backdoor swinger here, maybe tonight. With the 10, Wake could get beat, but they could just come within the number. So I lean Wake, too, with the points a little.
All right, next up here, Illinois and Northwestern. Big Ten action here. Illinois, 1-point road favorites, up to 3, 134 the total in this game. I wish I knew what was going on with Illinois, but they've obviously had some tough times the last few games. They lost at Maryland. They get blown out by Penn State at home, blown out by Missouri. They've just not played great the last few games. That being said, this number looks dirt cheap, because if you would have said to me before, especially where it opened, this opened -1, basically a pick 'em. And I said, if you would have said Illinois a pick 'em before the season against Northwestern, I would have jumped on it. And I still think Illinois is the side here. I did bet it money line at -135. Money line price has gone up a bit, but I think this is a good get right spot for Illinois. They need a good win against someone decent. They've lost their 2 most meaningful games in a row against Penn State and Missouri. They need to bounce back. I still think roster-wise, there's no comparison between Illinois and Northwestern got blown out by Ohio State at home, 73-57 in their last game. I think you get Illinois' best tonight. I like them here. Up to 3.5, but I still endorse them at 3.5. What do you think here?
Yeah, I think so too. Shout out to our guy Tease. Yeah, I'd look first half.
Yeah, I agree with Tease there. This is their spot, I think.
I think it is too. Northwestern just so up and down. It's tough to figure this team out. And at times, I like the under a little bit. I know the number isn't great, but when these teams get together, it goes under. Everything to me in this game screams under as well.
All right, we continue along. Only got a few games left. DePaul and Butler. We've got Butler 8-point home favorites, 136.5 the total. Somebody's got some faith in DePaul, because Butler opened 10-point home favorites, and the money's come in here on the Blue Demons in this game. We'll see if that holds up. But I know from an injury standpoint here for DePaul, the big issue is Caleb Murphy. Will he play? And they expect him back soon. But again, they were hoping maybe tonight. Doesn't look like it's going to be that way for them. DePaul and Butler, by the way, it's worth noting Butler has won and covered 5 in a row, head-to-head against DePaul. Wins by 18, 14, 10, 4, and 2. Last year, the meetings were close. I will say that. DePaul was played Butler very tough last year in the 2 meetings. But you look at what they've done on the road here, C-Mac, it doesn't inspire much faith. I mean, St. John's, they lose by 19 on the road, by 11 at Duquesne, by 38 at Northwestern, which is just an absolute disgrace that DePaul lost to Northwestern, for crying out loud, by 38 points on the road, by 15 at Creighton in their last game. And I was on DePaul, believe it or not, in that game, but only because of a backdoor basket in the final seconds did I get inside the number on that game. But, the number's coming down. They did play Butler tough last year, single-digit margins. Maybe that's what they see, but I'm not interested now in DePaul down to 8. In fact, I think now the value shifted to the home favorite. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, at 10, I was a little bit interested. Butler at home, this should be a good spot for them, but I don't want this team. Not right now. I just do not want them at all. DePaul playing better, still bad defensively. This number, I initially liked the under. It's come down a ton here. A lot of over bets, but this has come down 4 points. So I'm off completely.
All right, next up, Big 12 action here. TCU and Baylor. Baylor 6-point home favorites, 144 the total in this game. I am of the belief still that when it comes to this Baylor team, you put them up against good competition, and I don't have the most confidence in them right now. I mean, they did beat UCLA. They squeaked one out against Gonzaga, but also they had on a neutral court a loss to Virginia, blown out at Marquette by 26 points, the loss at Iowa State in their last game. Now, they are at home, and obviously there's a pretty good, strong home court. No question about that. But, this Baylor team, I've talked about it ad nauseum. They're not the same defensive team this year consistently. They've had some good defensive efforts, but you're going to be pretty good defensively when you're playing Washington State, Northwestern State, and Nicholls State. And then when you play some decent offenses, you've struggled. You gave up 96 to Marquette, 86 to Virginia, 77 in the loss to Iowa State. There's a banged-up team. Is the LJ Cryer going to play? He's missed the last 2 games with a concussion, and that hurts this team at the offensive end of the basketball court without question. It does feel like a bounce-back spot. I will say that after losing at Iowa State on Saturday. But I like this TCU group. I really do. I think they're a really good squad with Lampkin. Of course, Mike Miles just, he was injured early in the year. He's back. I mean, he's the Big 12 preseason of the year. He's an outstanding player for the Horned Frogs. Like I said, I think it's Jamie Dixon's best team that he's had. They're 12-1 now on the season. They have played only one true road game, but they passed that test, CMAC, at Utah. There's very few tougher places to play than that, especially out west, and they got a 75-71 win over Utah in that game. I'm taking the 6 with TCU. Even with Baylor maybe looking to bounce back after the Iowa State game, I think we got ourselves a ball game here, and I'm not trusting Baylor. If Cryer doesn't play, I trust them even less. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be in. If you like Baylor, he's got to play. If not, I don't want to back, but it's so just inconsistent. Even when he's been in, I've been lucky with Baylor this year. I think it is a decent spot for them. You mentioned the good win versus Utah. This game will be tough. I'm going to be off, I think, in the end. I kind of think the game could get over, but the total's high, so I don't want anything to do with this one. Now I look a little under.
All right, next up here we've got is the final game of our marquee games, and it's the only real late night game in college basketball tonight. Mountain West, Colorado State, and Nevada. We've got Nevada 4-point home favorites, 141, 142, 142 and a half the total in this game. Should be fascinating to see how it goes. I mean, when you look at it here with these two teams, Nevada obviously pretty strong on the home floor, but money's come in on Colorado State, and Colorado State on the roads only had one win in 4 road games this year. Will they be able to have success tonight? That ends up being the question. But I think when it's all said and done, you look at Nevada, I think they've been a little bit suspect at times with their consistency from one game to the next. The home court has held up for them. They are undefeated at home, and they have won 4 in a row. We'll see if they can carry that over. But Colorado State, I think if you grade out the personnel, they're supposed to be pretty good. They've missed Moody for sure this year. There's no question about that. And they come into this one limping a little bit after losses to USC and New Mexico. And then, of course, the real surprise was them losing at home to San Jose State, 78-70. I think Colorado State's better than they've shown. But at this time, they're going to have to show me that they can play better. And we haven't seen that here the last few games. That being said, I think it's a good bounce back spot. I'd lean to them +4. I just don't like their form enough, and I don't think I'll end up actually committing to taking them here, even though I'm leaning to the road underdog. What do you think here, Conor?
Nevada's been good at home. I think they get it done. I haven't been impressed with Colorado State on the road. I just don't want to lay points with Nevada. I don't want to do it. If this was just to win, I'd maybe look that way. So if you like that, take a money line or parlay. But I'm going to wait on Colorado State. They'll be better at home. They need to get a little healthy as well. So, I'm off.
All right, there we go. That is the Wednesday card. We appreciate it very much, everybody watching. If there's any Q&A, send them in now. There are a few games that we've hit most of them. There is a few added board games as well. Conor, we'll start with you. Of the games we have not talked about on the show yet, anything you like?
Yeah, I'm rolling with the Bonnies. Only one spot they've been good is at home. So, George Mason hasn't been great on the road. I do like St. Bonaventure just to win the game there. Bradley, Missouri State. You know what? The side here is essentially Bradley just hasn't been good covering numbers. 1-9 ATS on the road. So think about that, even though they could win this game. But I like the under there, 130.5. I think they just drag this out into a rock fight. So I like the under there. What was another one I had? Thought I had one more. I like Presbyterian, Winthrop, under 135. I think that's another game that stays under the total. I think that's it. I might have a couple more. I'm trying to go through it all. Go ahead.
Great question from Tease about, do the Minutemen get the points versus St. Louis? I do lean to the over, and I'm reluctant with St. Louis there as road favorites in that game against UMass 3.5. They've had some weird results on the road. I mean, St. Joe's isn't great. They struggled to beat them straight up, didn't cover. They got whipped by Iona on the road. I don't have a lot of faith in the Billikens right now as road favorites. They've been kind of, but at the same time, the Minutemen under Frank Martin, they've had some great wins and some awful performances,
especially lately.
Yeah,
that's the struggle with me in that one. I want to take UMass and the +3.5. That's one I had written down, and I agree with you. I do think that game gets over. the total in that one. Because St. Louis on the road, no way. To me, it's you take UMass, hold your nose or nothing.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. That's a tough one, though. Belmont and UIC, I'm not enamored with what I've seen out of Belmont, and I'm not laying 4.5 with them on the road. I lean UIC, but I don't think they're that great. Tough game. Belmont, early in the season, I would have said Belmont, it's a gift, -4, 4.5 on the road against UIC. Now I'm not so sure. Fordham, +2.5, says Keith Landry, asking about them tonight in their game. When it comes to Fordham, we know this team's, turned a little bit of a corner here a little bit. And Rhode Island started the season really in rough shape. And, they're starting to get a little bit. Fordham on the road, I don't necessarily count on them completely. That being said, I think they're better than Rhode Island. I do. It's just that, on the road, they haven't shown me a lot the last couple of years, and they're adjusting the number. Rhode Island and near Pick'em. I'm with you. I would lean Fordham, but I didn't pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, I'm off there.
Yeah. UNC Asheville +2 versus High Point. Good question there from Jay Burns in that one. I actually do lean to UNC Asheville a little bit there in that game. I think there's a lot of points in that game as well. The total's high, but I think it's got a good chance to go over the total in that one. In terms of the added board, I don't know if I bet it. I didn't bet anything on the added board. I don't really like anything on the added board here. Actually, I do. There's one I bet, and it's moved, though. It's Arkansas Pine Bluff. I think they're undervalued. I think, I cashed with Pine Bluff the other night. They just got inside the number. I like them a little bit, plus the points against Alabama State tonight.
I won just lean. I'm going to look at it a little bit more right when we get off. Gardner Webb, Campbell. Total's 128 now. I think it goes under. I think that one's a tight one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I did take a small shot with St. Joe. It's just, again, I'm not sold on Dayton laying big points, even though I know they looked impressive against Davidson on Saturday. I'm going to take a small look at St. Joe's there against Dayton as double-digit dogs. There are a few that I like, actually, now that I look at it. Chattanooga, I like them a little bit, +2 against Greensboro. I like George Washington, +8.5 against Richmond. I know Loyola Chicago is god-awful, but maybe it's a buy low signal on George Washington. And Richmond laying 8.5. I don't love them in that kind of point spread range. I lean to G-Dub there.
I like G-Dub. They've just been hit and miss. Yeah. On the road. It just times they've been covered, and then they'll just lay one and lose by 15 or 20. But yeah, I lean that way. I like them.
Yeah, and in terms of UCF, ECU, I like ECU a little bit. Home dog, 5.5, 6. And I like UCF. I like the way they're playing, but East Carolina's been all right at home. I think they can hang inside that number, ECU plus the points against UCF. I like South Florida against Temple. South Florida at home, I think, beats Temple. Temple's been too inconsistent. They can go into scoring droughts. South Florida, we've talked about all season on this show. They're improved offensively this year. It's one of the better offensive teams I've seen out of South Florida. I think money line at home, they beat Temple in that game. And Tulsa-Tulane, I like over. And the total's gone up. Tulsa's playing faster pace this year. Tulane plays fast, good offensively, shaky defensively. So over the total, Tulsa-Tulane.
Yeah, that should get over. There, it's moved already 3.5, but Tulane consistently in the 80s, we talked about, and not great defensively.
Yeah, there we go. Prairie View, Daryl Turner asking about Prairie View A&M against Southern. Southern is one of those teams that they're I think they're better than Prairie View, and they're betting it that way. I actually kind of lean to Southern. I didn't bet it, though.
Yeah, I'm off there.
Yeah, I didn't bet it. I leaned Southern, but I didn't end up getting involved in that. Oh, and Upstate +8.5 against Radford. Upstate is USC Upstate. South Carolina Upstate's usually a pretty good underdog, so I took them plus the points against Radford in the added board. As far as the other games on the main card that we haven't talked about, I took the over with Indiana State, Illinois State. I am on the over in that game, and I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's it because we talked about everything else. So we legitimately got through every Arkansas, Little Rock. No, that's a pass for me, Daryl Turner. Radford solid at home, but I think Upstate and the dog roll has been pretty good. So I'm going to end up liking Upstate there for a small bet, +8.5. And yeah, good job, Tease. 12-3 on Twitter for Tease with his college basketball. So Parlay Tease on Twitter. Make sure you check him out there. Good job. Congrats. Keep it up. Good work. We had good work yesterday. I think most of the bets were good. It was a really good college basketball day for me yesterday.
Great day.
The best bet was Pittsburgh. It was good for you as well, Connor. We did a good job yesterday. We'll see what we can do for an encore with best bets. Hit the like button. Make sure you do that. 177 live viewers. We appreciate it very much. We'll be right back with best bets right after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. All right, Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke. Southtown 101. Manscaped.com. Promo code PubSports. 20% off. Free shipping as well with promo code PubSports. All right, best bets. It was good night with best bets yesterday. Hopefully we got an encore in us tonight. Connor, we start with you. What do you like for best bet?
We got to go with it. Providence +5. Put it on the money line as well. I got to take this game because I think Bradley just bogs them down. Bradley, Murray State. There's some 132s out there, so under 132 for me. That's it. If you want, take the Bonnies. I don't know if you're going to use that. I think they win if you want a third one. A lot of games. Might as well give out more.
There you go. Bonnies, Providence, and the under with Bradley and Murray State. There you go for Connor Mack with best bets. My best bet, I'm going to keep it to one best bet, just like last night. With Pittsburgh, easy cash there. It wasn't easy, actually, because they had a bad start. But, boy, in that second half, they just took over, and they came back from a deficit to beat Virginia. I think this one has the potential to be just as easy. Let's go with Wake UNC over 152 in this one. Wake and North Carolina over 152. I think Providence is a great choice. Providence is one of my favorite sides on the card tonight. But my best bet will be that total in the Wake North Carolina game. Wake, North Carolina over 152 for my best bet for this Wednesday card. And that'll wrap things up for another edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. Hit the like button on the way out. We're back tomorrow on Thursday with another edition of the show, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. But join us tonight, 2 hours from now. We're reconvening the gang. The crew is back. College football, Pub Hub special edition tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Me, Connor Mack, DJ Big Boss, Big Ragu, and we will give you your first look at the TCU Georgia college football national championship game from every angle, side, total, player props. We will break it all down. We'll give all our looks, at least as of right now. The game's still 5 days away. We'll go for about 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll get you ready for the national championship game, TCU and Georgia, 8 p.m. Eastern. The College Football Pub Hub crew is back for a special edition. Join us then. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Wednesday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll be back in 2 hours. College Football National Championship special edition of the Pub Hub right here on Pub Sports Radio.